Welcome to the Dr. Dare Show live on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome, 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 everybody. When you come in, click like, click share. We have an interesting topic tonight. Are you the toxic person in your relationships? That is the question that we're asking tonight. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We'll start at 8:40 like we usually do, giving everybody a chance to come in and um, join us. So let me know how your week has been. Mine went by pretty fast. I've been pretty busy, um, just working and trying to keep things moving. But all is good. All is good. Yes. So when you come in, click like, click share, and let me know how your week has been. We are talking about tonight. Are you the toxic person in the relationship? And this is kind of like self reflection, like trying to understand, how do I behave in a relationship? Am I the problem in the relationship? Because sometimes it is us, and that's okay. And so it's not me. Donna says it's not me. Hey, Jenny. Hey, y'all. So it's not me. So sometimes it is us, though. Sometimes we're the toxic person in the relationship. So I have a video that kind of explains how you could be toxic in a relationship. A lot of people, we grew up, we watched our parents, but we don't know how to be in a relationship. I see that a lot with my clients in therapy. They get to a certain point and they don't know how to be in a relationship. It may be a communication issue, it may be a trust issue, or maybe people in the relationship are crossing boundaries. So we will explore that tonight. Click like, click share, um, and we will get started at 8:40. I like to give people a chance to um, come in. I mean, get home, get situated, get their snacks or whatever, and then come in. But yeah, so tonight's topic is, are you the toxic person in your relationships? And so, have you had a lot of issues with relationships? Any kind of relationship, friendships, romantic relationships, family relationships, or work relationships? Maybe you are the problem. And that's the question that we're asking tonight. And we have to be open to that. Like, are we the problems in the relationships? Are we toxic? And I have a good video that kind of gives us some details about that. But again, we will start at 8:40. Let me know how your week has been. Had a good week, bad week, busy week, non-eventful week. What is that? Hey, Donna. Donna says her week went. Mine did too. I feel like it went fast. I feel like my week went by fast. Yeah. So yeah, come on in. Once you come in, click like, click share. It's an interesting topic. Are you the toxic person in a relationship? Hey Bliss Onyx, what's up? How are you? So a lot of us, believe it or not, what I see in therapy, a lot of us don't know how to have a relationship. We say we want one, we think we want one, then when we get in one, then we get it to a certain point, and then we don't know what to do. So good stuff coming. We got a video coming that I think really explains some of the toxic traits that we're not even aware that we have, or that we carry into our relationships. One thing you got to remember is that we learn to be who we are from our parents. So that means if your parents weren't good communicators, if they didn't know how to show emotional intelligence or show emotions at all, you may have picked that up. And this is not negative things. This is just how things are. Our parents did the best they could with what they had, and so I think there should be a manual for parents and how to raise kids. So, oh, somebody sent me something. Make sure you share this video, and we will get started at 8:40. And we all have relationships, and this is just not romantic relationships. This is friendships. This is work relationships. This is romantic relationships. Any kind of ship that's out there. Hey, Tanisha. Hey, Abby. Hey, Rosie from YouTube. Got a lot of people from YouTube. Yes, welcome, welcome, welcome. Are you the toxic person in your relationship? And this may be hard for somebody to do like a self-evaluation of yourself in a relationship. You know, anybody out there struggled with relationships? Let me know. I am good, Rosie. How are you? Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. Thank you, everybody. Make sure you click like, click share, and we're going to have a good show. We're starting in 4 minutes. Let me know how your week has been, how your business is going. Good, 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 good. And welcome to the Dr. Dare Show live on Facebook and YouTube. I see a lot of people from YouTube tonight, which is we're glad to see that. Jennifer, and we think people at church have to be friends. We don't. Oh, okay, Jenny, that's a whole nother. That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So people at church, right? That's a good. What kind of relationships do you have with people at church? And Jenny starts this off saying, and we think people at church have to be friends. We don't. And that's a good question. But that's a boundary, meaning people don't know what boundaries are. You have to have boundaries for your relationships. That means the way you know that somebody has crossed your boundary is if you get upset with them when they do something and you never thought you knew what a boundary was, but that's how you can tell when somebody's crossed that boundary. Is that yes, Tanisha, so glad it's Friday. So glad it's Friday. But yeah, we need boundaries in all relationships. We will be playing this video in a second. It's going to explain a lot about toxic relationships. And sometimes it's us. Sometimes we don't want to um, admit that, but it's okay. So when you come in, click like, click share. Yeah, Tanisha, I'm glad it's Friday too. Glad it is Friday, Friday, Friday. Click like, click share. 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Oh yeah, Janae. I already experienced that in church. Like everybody, yeah. Sometimes you do need the boundary needs to be I'm going to church, praise God, and listen to the word and then come home. Sometimes that needs to be the boundary because I do that at a church here in Atlanta. I just go, listen to the word, and then I leave and listen to the choir or whatever, and then go. Because sometimes once you start making friends and all of that stuff, that's when things start to feel not good. So we got 1 minute. I'm gonna put on this YouTube video, but I want to give everybody a chance to come in. So if you're just joining, welcome to the Dr. Dare Show live. We are talking, are you the toxic person in your relationships? And that is the question we're asking. We're getting ready to have I found this YouTube. Hey Jeremiah. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hola, ¿cómo está? Yes. So are you the toxic person in the relationship? You know, how many people think you can put yes or no on the screen? How many people think that they are, hey Karen, hola, ¿cómo está? Hey Aaron. So how many people think that they are the toxic person in the relationship? Who would admit that, right? Okay, so watch this video. I'm getting ready to share this screen right now. Um, share screen, share screen, this one. Here we go. And let's go.
Hey everybody, today I want to answer a question that I received on the podcast. So here it is. Hey Katie, what if I'm the toxic one in relationships and friendships? I feel like I'm the person that self-help posts always tell people to cut out of their lives. I keep being too much, acting needy, and probably come across as jealous or clingy, and even spot myself subtly overstepping boundaries. I end up constantly asking for reassurance, and I don't want to be forgotten about or abandoned. I notice I'm doing all this and pushing boundaries, but I find it hard to stop, and I feel awful that I keep doing it. Am I just an awful person, or could there be a reason that I'm doing this? I don't have enough of the symptoms for BPD for it to be that. Is there a way to stop doing this before I end up pushing even more people I love away? I keep thinking of ways to try to apologize, but I'm scared it would just seem manipulative and people that I love will disappear. Thank you for your videos. You've been getting me through lockdown and the waiting list for CBT therapy. And I wish this question didn't make me look like such a bad person in such a helpful and loving community. So many of you wanted me to continue talking about this, so let's get into it. And in case you needed the reminder, struggling in our relationships doesn't make us bad people. It just means we have some things that we need to work on. And if I'm being honest, we all have things we need to work on. The difference really lies in those of us who put in the effort to improve and those of us who don't. The first thing I want to address is that if we are somewhat aware that we are the ones acting out and upsetting those we are in relationships with, that is half the battle. So often I spend months and months trying to get my patients to see that their actions have consequences, and what they said or did may be the reason someone isn't wanting to talk to them or see them as often. Therefore, if we already know we act in ways that could upset others, we can jump right into what we can do to improve it so that it doesn't end any of our important relationships. Oh, and I also want to mention that many toxic relationships are not caused by only one person in the relationship. It could just be a bad recipe. You know what I mean? There are some people that just know how to get under our skin. Or we can't help but get angry with this one person all the time. Ugh, it could be that we just don't work well together. And that's no fault of just one of you, but the fact that we just don't go together. And that's okay. In order to improve our relationships, we first have to identify the things that upset us or reasons that we find ourselves acting out. Like the person who asked this question mentioned, it's her fear of being forgotten or abandoned that leads her to ask for constant reassurance, which in turn pushes those she loves away. This is very common, and it's our responsibility to find a way to soothe that urge. Find ways to reassure ourselves, like checking our facts about a situation or relationship. Or work with a therapist to heal past wounds that have led to this intense fear. Whatever's going on with us, we have to take the time to figure it out. That can take many sessions in therapy or possibly lots of journaling. Most likely a bit of both, but this will be instrumental in our healing and in creating healthy relationships. And just as a side note, the only way we can improve our relationships is to work on ourselves, because we can't make anyone be more kind, understanding, or a better partner. They have to want that. All we can do is take responsibility for ourselves and how we interact with those we love and care for. And I know this is hard. We can think that if they would just apologize or stop doing that one thing, that it would all be better. And while that may be the case, we can't do anything to make them change. One of the most common toxic traits is thinking that other people can read our minds. We've all done it. When asked if we're upset or how we're doing, we look away, say, I'm fine, when we really aren't.
Right.
We hope that by showing, not saying, that we're upset, they will get the idea and work to make us feel better. That's passive-aggressive behavior and very toxic in any relationship. People cannot read our minds or know what it is that we're upset about. Sure, it could be a situation where they did something clearly upsetting, like forgot to pick us up at the airport or forgot our birthday or something like that. But usually those situations aren't common and are quickly apologized for. Most of our upsets or worries are things we are going to have to communicate with those we are in relationships with, meaning that if we are upset our friend or family member didn't invite us to that one event, we are going to have to tell them. We cannot expect them to know if we don't let them know. Which moves right into what I believe to be the key to success in any relationship. And that is over-communication.
Yes.
We all know that communication is important, but time and time again, I have my patients and even my friends tell me that they just didn't want to talk about that particular thing, or because they were upset, they didn't want to talk about it. The times when we aren't comfortable or are upset are the times where we need to find a way to clearly communicate what we're thinking and feeling. It's easy to talk about regular life things like how work or school is going or how one of our mutual
Right.
friends is doing and all that stuff. But what's difficult but necessary is talking through the hard stuff, letting that friend or partner know how we felt about something they did, or speaking up when we feel we aren't being respected. It's during those times that we have to stop, consider how we're feeling, and find a clear way to let those we love know about it. If we don't, I honestly believe that then we don't have a right to be angry with them because we didn't even give them a chance to acknowledge and possibly apologize for what happened. And yes, I know, some people are abusive or narcissistic, and it was better for us to just cut them out of our lives. But that's not always the case. And if we find ourselves thinking everyone around us is bad, disrespectful, or super toxic, we may
Maybe
want to
it's
take a
us.
minute and consider our role in all of it. Because the one common thread in all of it
Is
is
us.
us.
Yeah.
Another indicator that we may be the toxic person in the relationship is if we constantly keep score, meaning that we always know exactly how much money we've spent, time we've given, and favors we've done. We will hold it over their head at any given time. We can pull out our list, let them know how much we've sacrificed, and that we expect the same from them. This is toxic because we aren't doing things for our loved ones because it brings us joy or because we care. We are doing it to show that we are better than them. And the best way to overcome this is to make the decision to help someone out because we want to. And it brings us joy to be able to support and give to those we love. Obviously, I don't enjoy picking anyone up from the airport or helping a friend move, but I am really glad that I can support those I love and be there for them when they need. And I would do it in a heartbeat. So notice if you're keeping track of what you've done versus what they have done, and if it's affecting your relationship. It could mean that you're the toxic one. And again, remember that it's not always one person that makes a relationship toxic. It could just be a bad recipe. The other person could always be asking you for favors, and you used to be happy to do them, but they are never there for you when you need something. And now you find yourself feeling resentful. Well, then we have to let them know how we feel, and if they don't change, we can choose to leave that relationship. The
Right.
final area I want to cover, if we fear that we are the toxic person in the relationship, is compromise. If we are unwilling to compromise with those we love, that means that we are expecting them to always bend to our needs and wants, which in turn can communicate to them that what they desire isn't as
Doesn't
important
matter.
as what we want.
Right.
In a healthy relationship, there will be give and take. We are going to weigh certain situations and decide if it's worth fighting for or not. Like, how important is it that we get the brown sofa instead of the blue one? Or are we willing to spend the weekend with their friends because we know it's important to them, even though we don't really enjoy their company that much? Can we hear them out and possibly give in to a few of their wants? Of course, we can hold firm to some of the things that we need, but there is always going to have to be room for compromise. So consider just how important certain things or situations are and be willing to give in a little bit. Obviously, we can't be the only one to give in. So if you feel like that's happening more and more, again, we're going to need to communicate that to them. And if nothing changes, then we can decide whether or not we want to remain in the relationship. Know that we have all been the toxic member of a relationship because we didn't communicate or compromise, or maybe we kept score. It's okay. And it doesn't mean that we are bad people. It just means we have some work to do. We have to speak
Right.
up, talk about what's upsetting us, and apologize or compromise when needed. If we are able to recognize our role in a failed or struggling relationship and work to do better, we can improve or save some of our valued connections. I hope you found this video helpful. Please leave any additional questions or comments below, and I will see you next time.
Hello. Hello. So we have two questions on the floor. I hope y'all found some useful information in there, and bring up something that you saw in there that resonates with you, that you feel like. So we have Dewardis. He says, I think many people just gravitate to toxic people and situations. There's a certain level of attraction. Look how we as a people are entertained by some of those most toxic situations via social media, talk, and TV shows and the like. So Duartes believes that many people just gravitate to toxic people and situations. But what if it's you, the word? It's not you per se, but what if it's you that are toxic? Are you willing to take that time to um, do self evaluation? Because, like she said, if you're the common denominator and you keep going in and out of relationships and you're always the problem, is it you? Are you bringing in things that you don't realize that are toxic? So I'm going to read your statement again. So, and I want people to chime in as well. I think many people just gravitate to toxic people and situations, and that can be partially true. There's a certain level of attraction. Look how we as people are entertained by some of those most toxic situations via social media, talk, and TV shows and the like. And that is true. A lot of people like entertainment that's toxic. Um, what are your thoughts on DeWardis' statement there? And so then Jeremiah says, um, during college, I didn't respect myself enough and I was clingy to people. I don't give myself the love and care directly to myself, but I was looking for it from others. And that is, I'm glad you brought this up. Sometimes that's how our toxic traits are because we listen to what we call these self negative self talks and thoughts, and they tell us that we're not good enough to be with certain people, and so then we start to try to people please and be around those people, and they're treating us like, you know, but that's the toxic trait, is that you're going in thinking that you're bad and then you're allowing other people to come in. um let's see, we got something. Karen says very insightful. um Jennifer says, when I see that at a certain point, I back off or away from them. Yes, and that's another thing. You do have to pay attention to when you're seeing traits that a lot of people call it your intuition, but when you're seeing negative traits in people, don't keep affiliating. Like she said, my thing is I'll give you like 3 tries and then I'm just going to kind of back off and leave it alone. No hard feelings. I don't hate you. I don't, but that is my boundary. When you start to continue to be toxic, you know, yeah. So another toxic trait that I wanted to bring up that she mentioned is that keeping score in a relationship, meaning that you're constantly doing things just so you can say, I did this, I did that, I did this, what are you doing? So that's a toxic trait she mentioned. Another toxic trait she mentioned was just being, some people are just not good together, and you have to realize that. It's, she called it a bad recipe. Some people just do not click, and you have to realize that, because I think everybody wants people to like them. You want to be liked by everybody, and that's not possibility. Hey, Lynn. Lynn says some people may love the drama of toxicity, and that is another thing. Yep, some people, if there is no, and I know several of those, if there is no drama going on, they are not happy. They want something always to be going on, and if you notice that trait, you want to back off. So, what's some negative traits that we all have? Um, that we bring into relationships. I'm curious to know if anybody wants to share a negative trait that they have that they bring in a relationship. And I'm trying to think of myself with friends and people. Did I get done? Karen says, I never thought about being passive aggressive can be a toxic trait. When I see negative traits and how those traits and behaviors affect me, I'm out. My reaction is passive until it ends. Okay, Karen, that's a good point. And the lady brought that up in this. So passive aggressive behavior is like you're holding in, you're mad about something with somebody, but you're not saying it to them. You're just kind of giving them the cold shoulder, not talking to them. And like she said, you expect them to read your mind. So that's a toxic trait. I think I was like that when I was younger. Like I would be mad about something, but just not communicate what I'm mad about. I would just hold it in and walk around the house pouting or something like that, instead of actually having a conversation with the person and releasing those negative thoughts that I had in my head. And that's what she was kind of talking about. A negative trait that probably most of us have is that we expect people to read our minds. And nobody is clairvoyant. Nobody can read another person's mind. You have to communicate. And that's the biggest issue that I see with all relationships is a communication problem. If you're feeling something, if you're holding on to something, that's kind of a toxic trait where you're not telling the person itself. So I'm glad you brought that one up, Karen. That's a good one. That's a good one. And another thing that she says is that to have a good relationship is to over communicate. Talk about the things that are bothering you versus holding them in. Oh, Jenny, you said the same thing that I have. That's your toxic trait is keeping things in until I can't deal with them anymore. I'm glad you shared that because I have that too. I don't think I have it as much anymore since I became a therapist because I know that people can't read my mind. And so I have to, even though it's hard sometimes when you're upset to let somebody know how you feel, that's the best way to kind of resolve the issue or get at least get communication started is just not holding it in all the time and then building up that negative energy and then so thank you, Jenny. That's a good toxic trait. I have that one too. Again, like I think mine is a little better now, but like she said, we all have work to do. Nobody's perfect. um, so expecting people to read your mind is a toxic trait. Like Jenny said, holding things in and not communicating those things until you explode. That's another toxic trait. What else? What other ones do you guys have? So I'm gonna keep track of these. Keeping things in until I can't stand them anymore. Expecting people to read my mind when I'm upset about something. I know a lot of people do. I don't know. I think we learned that as kids. And Jenny says, need to work more on myself. Same here. Same here. Which is why I do these videos because some of this stuff, these are the things that I kind of talk about in therapy with my clients because a lot of the issues are you just not communicating what's going on inside. You feel the stuff. And another thing, a bad trait is that we all think that everything that we think is true. Just because you think it doesn't mean it's real unless the person like we can this is a good example. We can think somebody doesn't like us, right? They never said it. You've never you just judging by the way you feel. You think they looking at you a certain way or you think they're acting a certain way, but you really don't know until you ask that person. But a lot of us will stand there, hold that in, be mad at this other person, and they didn't even say that that they didn't like you, but we put it in our heads. So we have to be careful. Like the two that we named already is holding things in until we explode and expecting people to read our minds. Hey, Michelle. Just asking about you earlier, me and Karen. Lynn says, I talk to everyone about the issue, but I have issues facing off with the person I have the issue with until it has gone too far. And that's a good one, Lynn. And I think we all do that. We look to our support systems to kind of get it off our chest. But a good thing is to actually tell the person. And I know a lot of it is we feel like we might hurt their feelings or we feel like it's just going to make the situation bigger, but at least it starts the conversation. So that's a good one, Lynn. So Lynn has I talked to everyone about the issue, but I'm issue that is facing off with the person. I have the issue until it has gone too far. Then Jenny says she holds it in until it explodes. I'm with the mind reading thing. I expect people to read my mind and know that's called emotional reasoning. I'll tell you guys what that means. Emotional reasoning means just because I feel it, I think it's true, and that's not always the case. Just because you feel it doesn't mean that that's what the other person is intending to happen. So we got a good list going on here. Keeping things in until I can't stand it anymore. Expecting people to read my mind. Telling everyone else about the issue and not confronting. person that I have the issue with. Good one. Karen says she did a great job. She's talking about the video. If you missed the video, we had a video where the lady was kind of describing what a toxic person looks like and how we can have. And toxic doesn't mean that we are bad people. Like she said, we all have work to do on ourselves. Nobody's perfect. I always tell my clients that don't come in this therapy session thinking I'm perfect. I just have a different perspective to offer to you on your situation. But I'm human and I have my stuff that I need to work on as well. So Karen says, she did a great job breaking down negative traits. I used to be the person who kept it all in. It builds up, and if you're not careful, you will carry that baggage to the next relationship and may explode. Yep. And you're carrying that toxicity to different relationships. It's called baggage, like you said. And the best way to handle that, like she said, over communicate. Because the more you communicate, you give that person a chance, that other person a chance to understand what you're feeling. But if you're just holding it in all the time and pouting and not, you get upset because they did something, but you can't conjure up enough communication to talk about it. That's where we have to challenge ourselves. It's like we have to let them know because, like she said, if you don't clearly express your issues to the person, they're never going to get it. They're never going to know. And that's where we have to say, well, we're bringing in this toxic behavior. Where do y'all think a lot of us learn these behaviors from? I'm just curious. Where do y'all think we learned all the behaviors on how to communicate? So I'll put Karen's up there. Karen says she did. I'll read that again. She did a great job breaking down negative traits. I used to be the person who kept it all in. It builds up, and if you're not careful, you will carry that baggage to the next relationship and explode. Yes, parents. Yes, Jenny. That's where we learn everything from the way our parents communicated with each other. Because we sit there, however old you are, unless your parents are deceased at a certain point, you've learned all of those traits from um, our parents. And like I said, we're not here to blame them, but they did the best that they could with what they had. And Lynn agreed to parents and friends, yes. And, our parents did the best that they could. Not to talk negative about them, but not the best communicators. Most most people's parents aren't, unless they, became a therapist or some kind of profession where they learn that that's so important. But a lot of us learn to hold our feelings in. That's we learned how to keep things bottled up, and then we explode when we feel like we're not being heard. And that's another trigger for us, is if we feel like we're not being heard, then we act out. Okay, and so Lynn and Jenny said parents and friend. Lynn added friends to that part. Karen says, I used to hold everything in my younger days. I found that to be toxic to my well being. I insist on open communication no matter what. You may have to teach that other person about open communication. And that is the key in having a good relationship, is to communicate. It's hard. I think the hard part of that is if your feelings are already hurt, it's hard to communicate effectively with a person. I guess that's kind of what Lynn was saying too, is that you tell everybody else, but it's hard to tell that person because you have all these emotions going on. And that's human. We understand that. But I think a key or remedy to that, as a therapist, I would send my clients and say, well, maybe you just have to go cool off, process it yourself, and then come back and tell that person. And you may have to do that writing a letter or something. Whatever way it is to get that point across, it needs to be communicated. Tanisha says, I admit that I've been ghosting guys lately, and seeing signs of traits that my ex had. So Tanisha, you're actually taking something that hurt you in a previous relationship and you're taking that into your other relationships, and ghosting guys because you're seeing the signs and traits of everybody else. We call that generalization, where once one thing happens to you, you think that's going to happen all the time, and that's not the case. So Michelle, you said that's me. Michelle, so you meaning that you hold everything in or what? Oh, yeah, you said it. Michelle says, I hold things in now, but I do express how I feel to a point. Good, good. And we're all a growth in progress. It sounds like all of us have that common trait in us is just to take things and hold them in and be upset and then wait till the final moment to explode. This is our challenge on this call is that we all work on communicating when we get hurt because that's what it is. A lot of times we get hurt and we get mad and we don't want to communicate that, but that's when we should. And we don't have to. This is what we learned in grad school. Confrontation, when you're going to confront somebody, it doesn't have to turn out into a argument or a fight. You can say the same thing. I'll give an example. You can say the same thing even if it's negative in a nice way. I'll do this. I don't like you. Okay, right? That's a statement that I'm okay. Then this is a nicer way to say that, but not get the person offended. I've been observing you, and I thought you were a nice person, but then I realized that maybe you're not so nice, or maybe you're not a nice person. Even though that was negative, that would probably not cause them to be so offended, and they may say, "Well, why? Well, what's going on?" Versus if I said it the first way, it's gonna turn into an argument. Now that may not always work, but you can try it. That's our challenge. And okay, Michelle, I said that. Let's see. I hold things in. I hold things in now, but I do express how I feel at that point. Jenny says that's true because they make you feel wrong. Right. And that's the problem. And that's when the defense gets coming back, your defense mechanism jumps in. And so you want to defend and protect yourself. So then you have to, stand up for yourself. And so, but learning how to say that negative thing in a more positive way once you've cooled down. This is not, I always tell clients, this is not going to be easy when you first try, especially if you're used to getting upset and holding it in. It's going to take time to kind of work through that, but we're all capable of doing that. So Lynn says, I'm too blunt. I have the conversations on my head to get to a level of peace about it. If I said what I wanted to, it would not be well received, probably not the best scenario. No, I get that. I get that you say it directly and people get offended, but that's where we got to kind of challenge ourselves. It's like, and this is what I tell clients. Before you when you have a thought, right? We all have a thought and then we want to say it, but there's a space between the thought and the action that we take. So if we pause before we always just speak and say the things that may upset someone, we can pause and say, okay, well, let me kind of polish this statement. And that's going to take work, especially if you are, like you said, Lynn, you're a blunt person. It's going to take work to kind of counteract that and kind of let me slow down before I say this. Let me see if I can say it in a better way than I'm going to say it, because maybe they'll receive it better. Because all the goal is, like the lady said in the video, the goal is to convey what is bothering you in an effective way so that the person can understand it. Because what happens a lot, I do this exercise in couples counseling where I get them to write three things down that they desire more of or less of in a relationship, right? But the goal is that they have to repeat those things back to each other. And if they say, no, that's not what I said, then the person can correct what they said. So that way you're actually actively listening. Because a lot of times when we communicate in anger, we're not hearing each other. By that point, we've gotten upset. I don't hear what you're saying. I'm upset with you now. It doesn't matter what you said. I'm upset at this point. Okay. Good one, Lynn. Thank you for sharing that. And then Michelle says, people say I sorry. People say I always say what's on my mind without thinking about people's feelings. So I learned to approach things differently. Yes, kind of. And we all are like that. Sometimes we say the first we say the first thing that comes to our mind and our thoughts. And sometimes that's what I'm teaching. That's what I teach people in therapy is there's a break there that you can stop yourself and say, no, I can't say that like that. And sometimes, you know what our parents used to say, if you don't have anything good to say, just don't say anything at all. Or learn how to filter that, And I know people that are they naturally don't have filters. They just gonna say it and you take it whatever way you want to. But that may be a toxic trait because you got to work on making that being able to say something negative in a positive way and still get your point across because it always doesn't have to, because people, we're all human, and so we're going to get defensive. And once we get defensive, it's basically you're not hearing anything, because they say when you get angry, I just went blank, but a part of your brain kind of shuts down. Your rational part of your brain shuts down and you can't hear anything else. So imagine when you're telling people stuff in a negative way, that's the immediate defense mechanism and they're shutting down and they're not hearing it. So good. So I'm going to go over the traits that we kind of all talked about on the call so far, is keeping things in until I can't stand them anymore, expecting people to read my mind, telling everyone else about the issues and not confronting the person that I have the issue with. And so those are, and I think a lot of us on here kind of said that we kind of hold things in until the last minute to explode. And you can imagine how that is going to impact, these things are going to impact a relationship in a negative way. Both of y'all are not going to feel heard. Both of y'all are probably going to get upset, and then nothing's going to be resolved. And what happens, a toxic trait that I just thought of, is that we let things we hold things in years, and then all of a sudden we explode. Same thing, but that longevity of that just makes things even worse, if that makes sense. And Jenny says sometimes think, what if the shoe? Sometimes you think, if what if the shoe is on the other foot? So maybe you think about it first. Exactly, and that's a good strategy to use when you're heated about something. Stop and pause and say, well, what if I were that person and they were in the situation? How would I feel? And that'll help you have more compassion, because some of our negative toxic traits are that we don't have any compassion or any sympathy for people. We just assume they're just supposed to get over it or get to it. And that's a trait. And Tanisha says, I hold things in too much as well. I think, see, and I want, we all seem to have that trait. And that's why the lady said we are all a work in progress. So none of us are perfect. This show is not to bash anybody. It's just showing that we all have things that we have to work on. And so we can't always get upset in a relationship, whether it's a friendship, a coworker, a family member, and we get into an argument. It's something we're both doing most times, and we have to learn to communicate with that person if they're going to be a part of our lives. But it's like also what she said: if somebody keeps doing the same things over and over to you, then you have to decide. This is where the boundaries come in. You have to decide if I want to maintain that same type of relationship with that person. So there's that piece as well. So we don't want to be just being used and being torn apart because we're trying to not be a toxic person. Because that's not a good trait either, to just keep taking negative stuff and not voicing your opinion. Um, so thank you for that, Tanisha. I know I hold things in. Karen says, I've dated a few guys where they each were the type to keep everything to themselves and didn't discuss it. And it made me see how I used to be. And it made me be more patient. You do better when you know better. Right. Yep. And that's why I do videos like this. And this is a lot of these things we talk about now are things that I talk about in therapy. And a lot of these, the way we learn to hold stuff in, a lot of that came from our parents and our friends. And we watched that and we were like, oh, is that the way you handle situations? Is that the way you handle conflict? Okay, well, I just won't say anything about it. And then when I've came to my point, my boiling point, that's when I'll explode. And then it turns into a whole argument. Again, nobody's hurt each other. So good stuff. It seems like we all we all have that one trait of holding things in. And that yeah, and having people read our minds. Like that's one thing I want everybody on the call to challenge themselves. If you feel something, say something. You shouldn't be trying to think somebody's going to read your mind or know, oh, they should know what I'm feeling. They saw this or that, and not necessarily. We all have a perception of the way we see things. We perceive things in different ways. It's like that whole game where we used to play as kids, where we would all I think they passed around a piece of paper, or no, they whispered something in your ear like a sentence about a thing, and then by the time it got to the 10th or 11th person, it was something totally different. So we all perceive things, we all hear things differently. So it is very important to over communicate with your in any relationship that you're in. That's what I want people to take away from this. And Jenny says that was me. Yep. We hold things in, and you know, but we're human and we're not perfect, and that's why we're working on these things. Key that I want everybody to take away in any relationship, friendship, romantic relationship, work relationship, church relationship, is to communicate your feelings with the person if there's an issue, and not holding it in and let it just stew and everybody gets upset, and then by the time it's time to talk about it, it's just an explosion. uh, Tanisha says, I wish I was more like my mother, though she didn't take any crap. Your mom, that means your mom had boundaries. She If there was something she didn't like, she would communicate it, probably, right, Tanisha? She would express it and move on. And that's where your boundaries come in. A lot of people don't know what their boundaries are, but I stated this earlier at the show, is that you'll know when a boundary is crossed is that when you get upset when someone's did something. Say, for instance, if somebody uh, went in your bathroom and used all your toothpaste and didn't replace it. So one of your boundaries, meaning, and you got upset, one of your boundaries means that, hey, if you use my stuff, replace it. But nobody ever says it. I tell people, if you're living together, before you move in together, you should go through every room of that house and say, how do you like your kitchen to function? I wash dishes every night and make sure there's no dishes in the sink. That could be one person. The other person can say, oh no, well, I just wait till in the morning to do dishes, or I don't fill the dish. I fill the dishwasher up, and if it's not full, I don't mind. So you have to keep it, or you go to the bathroom. Say, how do you like brushing your teeth over the sink and spitting the toothpaste in the sink, or do you prefer somebody spit the toothpaste in the once they brush their teeth, spit it in the toilet or whatever? Those things which are never communicated, most people just fly by night, go into a situation, and then these little things turn to big things. All of that has to be communicated, and that is exactly why she's saying over communicate about everything. Everything. All right. Well, anything else? I think we've found our common toxic traits in this group, which all of us seem like we, we have the same one. So I just summarized them right there. But let's start working on. That's the challenge, is to start working on those and kind of changing those. So thank y'all. Thank y'all for spending this Friday night with me. And I will talk to y'all in 2 weeks, and we'll have a different topic. If you have topic ideas, you can send them to me, and I'll run a show on them. Just let me know. All right. Have a good night. Karen says work relationships and toxicity. Woo wee. That is a subject right there. Yes. Yes, and Jenny brought up a good one too with church relationships and toxicity is a thing. Yep. So all right, y'all. Good night, and I will talk to her in 2 weeks.